Well, good morning.
Good morning.
A few weeks ago, my wife and I, Deanna, had the chance to go back to North Carolina. I spoke at Connect Christian Church about the first Sunday or so of September, what they called their season opener. So all three of their services met outside, and everyone was encouraged to come wearing their favorite sports jersey. And so it was into a sea of Carolina Panthers and Ohio State jerseys that I walked up onto the stage with my Miami Dolphins jersey on. Exactly, that's what I got. All those boos, I couldn't believe it. But I told them that the Miami Dolphins are the only NFL team that are members of the Greater Naples Chamber of Commerce. And they put food on my table, so I'm wearing their jersey. Bill, I don't know if the Bears belong to the Peoria Chamber or not in those years when you were there, but you understand what I'm saying. So it was a big deal. The title of that message was Season Opener. Well, now we're all 6 or 7 weeks into the season opener, and so my remarks today are entitled Mid-Season Correction. I thought I was going to have to stand before you today in a Notre Dame jersey. Did you see that game? Yeah, oh my goodness. It was crazy how that ended, but fortunately, if you're a Knowles fan, they still have a perfect record. But I can guarantee you they're going to watch the tape tomorrow and probably make some mid-season corrections. So in Jesus' ministry, Luke 15, I am using this as the chapter to describe what I'm calling a mid-course correction. This chapter is full of stories, parables, brief stories that Jesus told, of which you are all familiar. But it lends itself well to our sports analogy. There are really two teams. There's a group of tax collectors and sinners, and they're always pictured as the bad guys. They are bad. They're evil. They go to bad places. They do bad things. And then there's a group of people who are always thought of as the holy and the righteous, and they're characterized as the Pharisees and the teachers of the law. And they're thought to be good and holy and righteous and all those specific attributes. It's interesting, if you look at Luke 15, when Luke begins the chapter, which of there are four groups there, two on each side, tax collectors and sinners, Pharisees and teachers of the law, and he ascribes to one of those two sets the fact that they are drawing close to Jesus. You already know who it is, you can guess. Here's what Luke says. Now the tax collectors and sinners were all drawing near to hear him, to hear Jesus. They were the ones who were pressing in. They were the ones to whom he was appealing, with a sense of hope, a sense of joy, a sense of forgiveness, a sense of reconciliation. Where on the other side, the people who were pushing away from him, standing far enough away that they wouldn't be confused with the sinners and tax collectors, but close enough to where they could still hear what he was saying. Now, they weren't wanting to listen to what he was saying so they could be better or closer to God. They were listening to what he said so that they could be a judge. Important concept. You ought to write that down. That's why they were listening to him. So in the midst of these two teams, Jesus appears on the field, maybe as a coach, maybe as a referee, maybe as a television announcer who's giving a play-by-play call of what goes on. That play-by-play reads like these three interesting stories. There's a story about a sheep, a story about a coin, and a story about a son. The interesting thing about all of them is they end up getting lost. They're not where they are supposed to be. And the outcome of each of those three stories is pretty much the same. That which was lost is found. There is great joy, and there is reconciliation. That which was lost is found, and really in the end, that's the way the world rotates. That's where the idea of happiness and joy and completion ultimately come from. So he tells a story about the sheep. Now, why he uses a sheep, I have no idea. Did you ever grow up on a farm or raise sheep or have a sheep? You know that sheep are dumb people. Sheep are dumb people. You can't corral them. You can't lead them. They do what they want. They eat whatever they want. They stink. And yet, Jesus uses the story of a sheep. One sheep out of 100 goes astray. Now, you might think this guy who goes after the sheep, he didn't have to do that. It was just 1%. 1% was gone. But the emphasis there is on the one. You still have the 99. You can be comfortable as the shepherd, the rancher, the farmer, whoever you are. You know, I've got 99. I don't really need to worry about that other one. But that's not what he did, not what he said. He went after the sheep. He left the 99 alone, so maybe unprotected. He goes after the one that was lost and finds it. He brings it back, and he has great joy. What's the story say? What does he do? He tells everybody. He invites friends, neighbors, relatives over to his house. They're going to celebrate. It's going to be a huge party. Guess what they're having for dinner? Rack of lamb. Don't you think so? And his joy, his exuberance, his excitement, his willingness to tell everybody about it. I found it, I found it, I found it. Come for the party. Great joy is seen there. So these stories increase with intensity. We start with one sheep out of 100, that's 1%. The next story is about a coin. 1 out of 10. So now it's gone from 1% to 10%. A lady in her home, she has 10 coins, which is pretty unusual. Somehow, over the course of her life, she's got 10 of them. She loses one. And the story, if you read it, says that she tears that house apart, limb from limb, every way that she can tear the house apart. She lights a lamp at a cost. It's a fuel oil, you've got to light it. She sweeps everywhere. And you know how the story ends. She finds it. Well, you know what she does. She calls all of her friends. Can you see all the girls coming over? Everybody's coming over. She probably spent more money throwing the party than what the value of the coin actually was. But once again, great joy when what was lost is found. So much joy that it can't be contained. Everybody on the block knows that there's great joy. Now, we live in an area where there are a number of homes pretty close together. In fact, we have a roommate. In Georgia, a place like where we live is called a duplex. Here it's called a villa. The villa sounds much nicer. So when two villas over are listening to their football team and their team scores, what do we know? We know that they've scored. When they win, it's even greater because you can hear the celebration. That's what it's like in this lady's house. She's found the lost coin. There's reason for celebration and for joy. Well, you know, he could have stopped there, and we all have an understanding about property like a sheep. We understand what it is to carry money or to have something that's of value and to hang on to it, to lose it, but to regain it. But he doesn't stop there. He goes on to describe God's love and God's willingness to seek what's lost, to find what is lost, to restore what is lost, and to celebrate what is found. And he goes on to do that with telling a story that I think we can all relate to. And it's a story about brothers. And now it's not just one sheep out of 100, 1%. It's not one coin out of 10, 10%. It's one brother out of 2, 50%. As the stories go, you can see the intensity building. At the end of the day, the message is, whatever is lost does not need to be. There needs to be a sense of urgency in finding the lost. When you find it, there's great joy. And when you find it, you celebrate. The ultimate goal of this story is reconciliation, bringing what was lost back, restoring that relationship, and moving forward. So it's a story we probably all can relate to. If we're parents, maybe we've had a son or a daughter or a couple of boys, we know what that can be like. We know that kids are different, right? When they're young, when they're in the house. In many regards, the boys in my family, we never grew out of it. We were always like the young boys in the house, kind of wrecking things every time we were together. But the young son comes and says, you know what, Dad? Had a great time growing up, nice family, well-to-do, but I've had all the happiness here I can take. It's really time for me to hit the road and move on down the line and find my way, find out what I want to do, where I want to go. So, you know, as a good father, I know your obligation is to give me my inheritance. Half of all that you have becomes mine now. And I would really like it today. Cash would be best. Can't you hear him saying that? Yeah, if you could just put it all in cash, that'd be great. Interestingly, the father acquiesces. The father is willing to let the young son go out on his own if that's what he wants to do. So the young boy leaves. He takes with him his part of the inheritance. And now suddenly he's a self-made man. He is totally on his own, can make all of his own decisions, and determine what he's going to do with his young life. The world is before him, and he can do it all. And you go out and you read the story, and you find out that it doesn't take very long, many months, before he has squandered all of his wealth. It's gone. There's no cash and carry. There's no carry because there's no cash. It's gone. And he finds himself in a place where he's got to live. He's got to go to work for someone. So the humility that it must have taken for this young Jewish boy to go to work for a farm where hogs were raised, not part of their culture. And beyond that, not even having anything to live except the extra food that the hogs didn't eat, the pea pods or whatever all of it was. So he is forced into humility. He realizes this isn't the life that he wants to live at all. Look at verse 17. I don't know what your version says. The New International Version says it so well. And all at once, he came to his senses. I don't know how yours reads, but that's what the words mean. All at once. All at once. Have you ever had one of those all at once experiences? You know someone who has? It can radically change their life. And for this young man, ultimately it would. He realizes, I'm in a place I don't want to be. I don't have a purpose for my life. I don't have a sense of being, much less a sense of well-being. I have left my father and my family, and I've lived a terrible life. I've done things that I am embarrassed by, that my family would be embarrassed by, that would bring embarrassment on my family. I've done wrong in the eyes of God and in the eyes of my family, in the eyes of man. All at once. Dan and I have 2 kids. They're grown, both married, both have children. When our son was in his early 20s, out of college, because he had chosen to end his college career, he was living in Concord, North Carolina, where we were living, and he was living in an apartment complex where a lot of crazy things happen. It's not a place that we would ever want to live, for a lot of different reasons. A lot of sorrow, a lot of tragedy. He was living in a small apartment. He wasn't doing anything bad. There was no drugs and no crime. He had a little job, call center, making minimum wage. And it just didn't seem that his life was going anywhere. We would sit in church at then Concord Christian Church, and I would sit in the back, and every Sunday I would look to the doors that led into the auditorium, into the sanctuary. Do you know what I was looking for? I was looking to see if my son was going to come in before that service began. And then maybe before the singing was over. Maybe he'll be here before communion. Maybe he'll be here to hear the message. And Sunday after Sunday, I remember sitting there and looking. And we prayed. You know, if you have a pulse, you have a purpose. And we told that to our son over and again. We've told that to our kids for as long as they've been able to hear and understand. One day in December, he came out to the house and he said, I've decided to go to Lincoln Christian University. It was like all at once he came to his senses. Now, I have to tell you, Lincoln Christian University has some very low acceptance standards. Jeff Chitwood went to Lincoln Christian University. I went to Lincoln Christian University. And here's my son in late December saying, I want to go to Lincoln. And I said, well, you mean next August, next fall? No, I want to go in January. Literally just 2.5 weeks away. And it led to all kinds of questions. What do you want to do? What are you thinking? And it was a complete change of mind. Complete turning. The Bible word, the Greek word for that is metanoia, which is, it's turning back. It's repenting. All at once. We were so surprised. Just a few weeks later, after a lot of phone calls and a few checks written, Deanna drove Jonathan to Lincoln Christian University. And now we fast forward a few years. Jonathan's graduated from the university. He works in their tech department. He married a young woman he brought home to us a few years ago around Christmas to say, I want you to meet this young lady, whom he married. Coincidentally, Bill, she works for the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, so she's got a good pedigree. They have a little girl whose name is Charlotte, and in November we'll fly up there and celebrate Thanksgiving with them. But we never stopped hoping, never stopped praying, never shut the door. And again, it wasn't anything in particular that was terribly wrong with lifestyle or, but he was just adrift. So in between that and this young man, we find all kinds of people we know. Sons, daughters, fathers, mothers. People who've been in and out of our lives. And all at once, something changes. Let me tell you 2 or 3 things about the prodigal and the elder brother. About the prodigal, this. Spiritual tragedies occur when we limit ourselves. Spiritual tragedies occur when we limit ourselves to the joy of our own plans. Now, we think we know where we're going, what we're going to do. We make those plans. And when we talk about living by the book, we're talking about the book that we ourselves have written, and not about the book of instructions that God gave us for living. And with respect to the elder brother, he heard the party. He asked one of the servants, what's all the yelling and screaming about? What football team won today? What's the party? What's going on? Haven't you heard your brother's home? And we're putting a robe of distinction on him and a ring on his finger, and we're killing the fatted calf. And that night they were going to have some great barbecue, inviting all their friends and family around to share the joy and to tell the story. Well, you know how brothers can be. He could have said, that's so incredible. I want to see my brother. I want to embrace him. I want to hug him and kiss him. I want to welcome him home. But he is sadly like too many families we've seen or otherwise, where people hear the story of something that was lost and is found, and they want to reject it. Well, you don't know how bad he's been. You don't know where he's been. You don't know what she's done. You don't know how they've hurt me. You don't know all the pain they caused my mom or my dad. You don't know all the embarrassment they brought upon our family. And so this elder brother, who was heir of all things, he had it all. All that was left was his. And yet he had less joy than the brother who just came back, the son who just returned home after having come out of a life that only led to a dead end. And then there's the picture of the father. And his whole purpose is reconciliation. Reconciling his son to his family. So the Bible says that the father would stand on the porch of the home, and he would look, and he would wait every day. And the older I get, the worse my eyes are. But I think if I saw my son or my granddaughter coming in from the outside, I would recognize them, the smile that it would put on my face, the hug that it would create, the embrace that would take place, just so I could hug them and kiss them and tell them I love them. Just like this father wanted to do to his son that was lost, but was now found. Well, a mid-course correction, I think, comes down to just one thing. Many of us think that we are judges of others. But what did Jesus tell us that we would be? You are to be my witnesses. You are to be my witnesses. He does not tell us we're to be his judges. He's got that handled. He doesn't need anybody else on the bench. He said, you're to be my witnesses. The father could have said, you know what? I don't care if he's back. I don't want him back. He can live in the barn. I don't care. But he didn't. He welcomed him back. There was great joy when that one sheep was found. Welcome back. There was great joy when that one coin was found. Welcome back. And when this son who had abused everything suddenly came to his senses, that spirit of love and hope and grace was all there. So what are you? A judge or a witness? I read this, someone else wrote. The gay boy you punched in the hall today committed suicide a few minutes ago. The girl you called a slut in class today, she is a virgin. The boy you called lame, he has to work every night to support his family. The girl you pushed down the other day, she's already being abused at home. The girl you called fat, she is starving herself. The old man you made fun of, because of his ugly scars, he fought for our country. The boy you made fun of for crying, his mother is dying. The judge thinks she or he knows it all and can make a random and rapid decision. The witness says, you know what? I'm going to love that person. I'm going to extend grace. I'm going to love that person. I'm going to pray for them. I'm going to love that person. I'm going to care. My job as a witness is to find the lost. And when that happens, there is joy. And that joy, that godly joy, is the purpose, which is the pulse of my life. You tell me what mid-course correction you need to make. Perhaps you have a decision to make today with respect to your faith and relationship to Jesus Christ. Robert comes to lead us. Let's stand together. I'll pray and then we'll sing.